Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment in every difficult conversation, a moment where our heart races, where we feel that lump rising in our throat, where we ask ourselves, do I say something or do I stay silent? And often we choose silence. We tell ourselves it's safer. We convince ourselves it's not our place, that it's better to avoid the discomfort. But here's the truth. Your silence is hurting them more than you think. There's a kind of betrayal that cuts deeper than words. A betrayal that leaves wounds invisible to the eye, yet unmistakable to the heart. This betrayal doesn't come from actions taken, but from actions withheld. It's the betrayal of silence. Silence can feel safe. It can feel like the right choice when we don't know what to say, or when we fear making things worse. We tell ourselves that staying quiet is neutral, that we're not adding to the problem if we simply don't get involved. But silence is rarely neutral. Silence, especially in moments of struggle, is often experienced by others as abandonment. Think about a time when you were in pain. Maybe you were grieving the loss of a loved one, facing a failure, or grappling with shame. You reached out or hoped someone would notice your struggle, and instead you were met with silence. No comforting words, no validation, no one willing to step into the uncomfortable space with you. Just silence. How did that feel? For many, that silence is louder than any insult, sharper than any criticism. Because silence in those moments sends a message: you're too much. Your pain is too heavy. I can't handle this. You're on your own. And even if that's not the intention, it's often how the silence is received. When we choose silence, we may think we're protecting ourselves, but we're also depriving others of the connection they need most. Human beings are wired for connection. It's in our biology. We're social creatures who rely on one another for comfort, understanding, and belonging. And when someone we care about is hurting, staying silent can sever that connection, leaving them to suffer in isolation. Silence in the face of someone's pain can feel like a betrayal because it undermines one of the core tenets of trust, the belief that we will show up for each other. Trust is built not by grand gestures, but by small moments of presence. It's built when we lean in instead of turning away, when we say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm here with you. But silence does the opposite. It creates distance where there could be closeness. It fosters doubt where there could be trust. There's also another layer to this betrayal. When we stay silent, we send a message to ourselves, too. Every time we avoid speaking up, we reinforce the belief that vulnerability is dangerous, that it's better to hide behind a wall of silence than to risk the discomfort of connection. We tell ourselves that our fear of saying the wrong thing is more important than the other person's need to be seen and heard. And yet, if we step back, we often realize that what people need isn't perfection. They don't need us to have all the right words or to fix their pain. What they need is presence. They need to know that someone cares enough to sit with them in the discomfort, even when it's messy or awkward or uncertain. Silence can also be a betrayal on a larger scale, beyond individual relationships. When we witness injustice and choose to stay silent, we send a message to those who are suffering: your pain isn't worth the risk of confide discomfort. Silence in these cases isn't just passive, it's complicit. It allows harm to continue unchallenged. It allows systems of inequality and oppression to remain intact. History is full of examples of the harm caused by silence. In times of crisis, it's often the silence of bystanders that allows injustice to flourish. Whether it's the silence of those who refuse to speak out against prejudice, the silence of leaders who prioritize their reputation over doing what's right, or the silence of friends who turn away when someone they love is struggling, this silence leaves deep scars. But perhaps the most painful form of silence is the silence between people who care about each other. The silence that settles in when we avoid hard conversations, when we let misunderstandings fester, when we withhold forgiveness or love because it feels safer to protect our pride than to bridge the gap. In these moments, silence can erode relationships from the inside out. It creates a chasm between people that grows wider over time, until one day we look up and realize we're standing on opposite sides, unsure of how we got there. There are things we carry in life that are seen, and then there are those that remain invisible to the world, but weigh us down just the same. Among the heaviest of these burdens are the unspoken words we keep locked inside. These words linger in our minds, resting in the spaces between what we wanted to say and what we chose to withhold. Over time, they collect like stones in our hearts, silently shaping our relationships, our emotions, and our sense of self. The unspoken words can be the things we should have said but didn't. The I love you that felt too vulnerable. The I'm sorry that got stuck in our pride. The I need help that we swallowed because we didn't want to appear weak. They can also be the words we held back out of fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of not being understood. Whatever the reason, when we hold back these words, they don't disappear. They sit with us, taking up space in our minds and hearts, growing heavier with every passing moment. What we don't always realize is how much power those unsaid words can carry. A missed apology can turn a small misunderstanding into a chasm between two people. A withheld compliment can leave someone wondering if they're truly appreciated. A silent I forgive you can allow resentment to fester, slowly eroding trust. When we choose not to speak, we think we're avoiding discomfort. But often we're just trading one kind of discomfort for another one that lingers, one that weighs on us in ways we might not even recognize. And the thing about unspoken words is that their weight isn't ours alone to carry. They affect the people around us too. When we don't express how we feel, when we choose silence over honesty, we leave others to fill in the blanks. We force them to interpret our silence, to guess at what we're thinking and feeling. And more often than not, they assume the worst. They assume we don't care, that we're angry, that they've done something wrong. Our silence can create stories in their mind, stories of rejection, of inadequacy, of not being enough. Think about a time when you were on the receiving end of someone else's silence. Maybe you confided in a friend and they didn't respond the way you hoped. Maybe you were struggling and someone who you thought would show up for you didn't. Or maybe you were in a relationship where important things went unsaid, where you felt the weight of all the things your partner wasn't telling you. How did that silence feel? Did it feel neutral? Or did it feel heavy, like a door quietly closing between you? That's the weight of unspoken words. It's not just the weight we carry within ourselves, it's the weight we place on others when we leave them guessing, when we choose avoidance over honesty, when we stay silent in moments that call for courage. This weight can show up in the smallest of interactions. Imagine a coworker who's done an incredible job on a project, but you stay silent, assuming they already know they're doing well. Imagine a friend who's clearly going through a hard time, but you don't ask them how they're doing, because you don't want to intrude. Imagine a loved one who's hurt you, but instead of telling them how you feel, you keep it inside, hoping the feeling will fade on its own. In each of these moments, our silence leaves a gap that could have been filled with connection, with understanding, with healing. The weight of unspoken words isn't always about conflict or pain, sometimes about missed opportunities for joy. It's the laughter we could have shared if we'd only been brave enough to tell that silly story. It's the deep conversation we could have had if we'd been willing to ask the hard questions. It's the bond we could have strengthened if we'd expressed our appreciation instead of assuming it was understood. But unspoken words don't just create distance between us and others. They can also create distance within ourselves. When we hold back what we're really feeling, we disconnect from our own truth. We bury our emotions, hoping they'll go away, but instead, they simmer beneath the surface, showing up in unexpected ways through stress, through that nagging sense that something is missing. We tell ourselves that staying silent is easier, that it's safer, but is it really easier to carry the weight of all those unsaid words, all those unexpressed emotions, all those missed opportunities for connection? Or is it just that we've gotten so used to the weight that we don't even realize how heavy it's become? Vulnerability is often misunderstood. It's a word that makes many people uncomfortable because it's so closely tied to feelings we've been taught to avoid: fear, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. For most of us, being vulnerable sounds like weakness. It sounds like opening ourselves up to judgment, rejection, and shame. But here's the truth: vulnerability isn't weakness. Vulnerability is courage. It's the raw, unfiltered willingness to show up, to be seen, and to speak our truth, even when there are no guarantees of how it will be received. Courage and vulnerability are deeply intertwined. We can't be brave without being vulnerable, because courage always involves risk. It's not about being fearless. It's about being willing to take a chance, to step into the unknown, even when fear is present. It's about saying, I'm scared and I'm doing it anyway. That's vulnerability. And that's courage. But why does vulnerability feel so hard? Why do so many of us resist it, even when we know that true connection and growth require it? Part of the answer lies in how we've been conditioned. From a young age, we're taught to be strong, to be independent, to keep it together. We learn that showing emotions is risky, that asking for help makes us look weak, that admitting we don't have all the answers might cost us respect. So we build walls, we armor up, we hide behind masks of perfection, competence, and control, hoping that if we can just keep it all together on the outside, no one will see the messy, imperfect parts of us underneath. But that armor comes at a cost. It keeps us safe, yes, but it also keeps us disconnected. It creates distance between us and the people we care about. It keeps us from experiencing the deep, authentic connections that come from being fully seen and accepted for who we really are. Courage and vulnerability means taking off that armor. It means allowing ourselves to be seen, not just in our moments of strength and success, but in our moments of struggle and uncertainty. It means saying, I'm not okay when we're not okay. It means asking for help when we need it, even though we worry it might make us look weak. It means telling someone we love them without knowing if they'll say it back. It means apologizing when we've messed up, even though it's uncomfortable and humbling. These acts of vulnerability are some of the hardest things we can do, and yet they're also some of the most courageous. Because when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we're saying, I trust you with this part of me. We're saying, I'm willing to risk rejection, disappointment, and judgment because I believe that connection is worth the risk. And here's the paradox of vulnerability. Even though it feels like weakness to us, it often looks like strength to others. When we see someone else being vulnerable, we don't think, wow, they're so weak. We think, wow, they're so brave. We admire their courage. We're drawn to their authenticity. Their vulnerability gives us permission to be vulnerable too. This is why vulnerability is so powerful, it's contagious. When we show up with courage and authenticity, we create a ripple effect. We make it safer for others to do the same. We build trust. We deepen relationships. We create spaces where people can show up as their whole and perfect selves and know that they'll still be accepted and loved. But vulnerability doesn't just strengthen our relationships with others, it also strengthens our relationship with ourselves. When we embrace vulnerability, we stop wasting energy on perfectionism and people-pleasing. We stop trying to control how others see us, and we start focusing on living in alignment with our values. We become more resilient because we learn that we can survive discomfort, failure, and rejection, and that those experiences don't define our worth. And yet, even with all its rewards, vulnerability is never easy. It's uncomfortable. It's scary. It's risky. There will be moments when we open up and don't get the response we hope for. Moments when we put ourselves out there and fall flat on our faces. Moments when we wonder if it's really worth it. In those moments, it's tempting to retreat, to put the armor back on, to tell ourselves never again. But if we do that, we miss out on the beauty and growth that come from living authentically. Because vulnerability isn't just about the risk, it's also about the possibility. The possibility of deeper connection, greater empathy, and true belonging. The possibility of discovering our own strength and resilience. The possibility of living a life that's rich, meaningful, and fully alive. Human beings are wired for connection. It's in our biology, part of what makes us who we are. We crave love, understanding, belonging, and acceptance. And yet so often we choose comfort over connection. We choose to avoid the difficult conversations, to stay in our emotional safe zones, to protect ourselves from discomfort, even if it means sacrificing the depth and authenticity that true connection requires. Choosing comfort might seem like the easier path, and in the short term it often is. It's easier to avoid addressing the tension in a relationship than it is to sit down and have a hard, honest conversation. It's easier to change the subject when a friend brings up something painful than it is to lean in and hold space for their emotions. It's easier to smile and say, I'm fine when we're struggling than it is to admit that we're not okay and risk feeling exposed. But while comfort might feel safe in the moment, it often comes at a cost that we might not recognize until it's too late. Every time we choose comfort over connection, we create distance. We build walls instead of bridges. We miss opportunities for deeper understanding, for healing, for growth. Think about a time when you avoided a difficult conversation. Maybe you were afraid of how the other person would react. Maybe you didn't want to risk hurting their feelings. Maybe you were worried about making things worse. So you stayed silent, hoping the problem would go away on its own. But did it? Or did that silence just create more tension, more misunderstanding, more distance? That's what happens when we prioritize comfort over connection. We avoid the short-term discomfort, but we end up carrying the weight of unresolved issues, unsponged feelings, and missed opportunities for connection. And over time, that weight can add up. It can erode trust, intimacy, and closeness. It can leave us feeling isolated, even in our closest relationships. Choosing connection over comfort means being willing to step into discomfort for the sake of something greater. It means having the hard conversations, even when it's awkward and messy. It means listening with empathy, even when we don't know what to say. It means showing up with authenticity, even when we're scared of being judged. This kind of courage isn't easy. It requires vulnerability. It requires us to let go of our need to control the outcome and to trust that the relationship is strong enough to handle the discomfort. It requires us to be brave enough to say, this is hard, but it matters, you matter. Our connection matters. And here's the thing, when we choose connection over comfort, we often discover that the discomfort isn't as overwhelming as we feared. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's scary, but it's also real, it's honest, it's human. And it's in that space of honesty and vulnerability that true connection can grow. Choosing connection over comfort can also change the way we show up in the world. It allows us to be more present, more empathetic, more attuned to the people around us. When we're not constantly trying to protect ourselves from discomfort, we can focus on what really matters, on showing up for the people we care about, on building relationships that are rooted in trust, respect, and authenticity. It also makes us more resilient. When we face discomfort head-on, we learn that we can handle it. We learn that we can survive the awkward moments, the difficult conversations, the vulnerability hangovers. We learn that discomfort is a part of life and that it doesn't have to define us. But perhaps the most important lesson we learn when we choose connection over comfort is that we're not alone. When we show up with courage and vulnerability, we invite others to do the same. We create spaces where people feel seen, heard, and valued. We build bridges instead of walls. We create communities where people can show up as their whole, imperfect selves and know that they belong. Speaking up is one of the most powerful actions we can take, yet it's also one of the most difficult. Whether it's standing up for ourselves, calling out injustice, or expressing our thoughts and emotions, speaking up requires courage. It means stepping into discomfort, risking criticism or rejection, and confronting the fear that our voice might not matter. But what we often underestimate is the ripple effect of speaking up, the profound impact it can have, not just on ourselves, but on the people around us and the world at large. When we speak up, we set something in motion. It might seem small at first, like a pebble dropped into a pond. But just like that pebble creates ripples that spread outward, our words and actions can create ripples that touch lives in ways we may never fully see or understand. Speaking up can inspire, encourage, and empower others to do the same. It can spark conversation, challenge the status quo, and plant seeds of change. But why is speaking up so hard? One reason is fear of being judged, misunderstood, or dismissed. We worry that we'll say the wrong thing, that we'll make things worse, that we'll be labeled as difficult, emotional, or confrontational. We worry that our voice won't make a difference. And sometimes that fear is rooted in past experiences, times when we spoke up and were met with silence, ridicule, or rejection. Yet, even when it feels like no one is listening, our voice matters. Sometimes the ripple effect isn't immediate. Sometimes the impact of our words takes time to be felt. But that doesn't mean the ripple isn't there. Every time we speak up, we're sending a message not just to others, but to ourselves. We're saying, I have a voice, and my voice is worth hearing. We're reclaiming our power, our agency, and our right to be seen and heard. Speaking up can also create space for others to do the same. When we share our stories, express our emotions, or stand up for what we believe in, we give others permission to do the same. We break the silence that so often surrounds difficult topics, whether it's mental health, discrimination, or personal struggles, and we show others that they're not alone. Think about a time when someone else's courage inspired you. Maybe it was a friend who spoke up about something they were going through, a colleague who challenged an unfair policy at work, or a public figure who used their platform to advocate for change. Their courage likely made you feel seen, validated, or motivated to take action. That's the ripple effect in action. And when we speak up, we have the potential to create that same impact for others. But the ripple effect of speaking up isn't just about inspiring others, it's also about creating change. Throughout history, social movements have been fueled by people who were willing to speak up, even when it was risky, uncomfortable, or unpopular. From civil rights activists to whistleblowers, from suffragettes to environmental advocates, change has always started with individuals who were brave enough to raise their voices and demand something better. And while not all acts of speaking up will lead to sweeping societal change, even the smallest acts can make a difference. Speaking up can strengthen relationships by fostering honesty, empathy, and understanding. It can challenge harmful behaviors, spark new ideas, and create a culture of openness and accountability. It can help us set boundaries, advocate for our needs, and live in alignment with our values. There's also a ripple effect that happens within us when we speak up. Every time we choose courage over silence, we build resilience. We learn that we can survive discomfort, conflict, and vulnerability. We learn that our voice matters even when it shakes. And we learn that by showing up authentically, we're not just creating ripples in the world, we're transforming ourselves. Of course, speaking up doesn't always guarantee a positive outcome. There will be times when our voice isn't welcomed, when our message isn't received the way we hoped, or when we face backlash for speaking our truth. But even in those moments, the ripple effect is still there. Because the act of speaking up itself, of choosing courage over fear, authenticity over avoidance, connection over comfort, has value regardless of the outcome. And sometimes the ripple effect isn't about changing others at all. Sometimes it's about changing how we see ourselves. It's about breaking free from the stories that have kept us silent, the stories that tell us we're not smart enough, strong enough, or important enough to make a difference. It's about realizing that we don't need to be perfect, polished, or fearless to have an impact. We just need to be willing to show up, to speak up, and to trust that our voice, however small it may feel, has the power to create ripples that extend far beyond what we can see. In the end, the power of speaking up, of breaking the silence, lies not just in what it changes around us, but in what it transforms within us. Choosing to express our truths, embrace vulnerability, and prioritize connection over comfort takes immense courage. But it is through these acts that we create the possibility for healing, growth, and authentic relationships. Silence may feel like protection, but it often becomes a barrier holding us back from deeper connections, unresolved wounds, and missed opportunities.